Behind every successful entrepreneur, there is a story. The heart of the founder, something that makes him unique. But when we look at that kind of success on the surface level, we think all of those founders just have everything together. But below there are stories that matter, stories that if we had to find out about them, could help another struggling entrepreneur have the courage to move forward. And that's why I've invited a very special guest who is not the founder for this particular book, but someone who feels very passionate about the story. We're going to be chatting about It's About Time, and I have got one of the co-authors, Adrian Saville. Thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome to Bright Learn and Earn.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
So when I was looking at your bio, it kind of reads like academic royalty. I just see the words cum laude after all of your qualifications. And you're also heavily involved with Gibbs. You're one of the founders of the, what is it called?
Center for African Management and Markets.
There you go. And he really made a big instrumental change in a lot of students when we were at the TymeBank, with the TymeBank, I call it TymeBank launch, but it's not with the book launch. There were a whole bunch of people from TymeBank there who really attributed their success to you.
Wow. Okay.
I even had
I'll take that.
one of the ladies who had this kind of groupie vibe. We wanted to have a photograph taken, and it was really an exciting book launch. But I have to ask you, why you? Why did the founder contact you and Bruce to write this book?
Kim, there's a bit of a backstory, and I'm entrepreneurial myself. 2023, I was in the process of building a new venture, and I happened to have a cup of coffee with one of the Time co-founders, Konrad Jonker, and put my cards on the table. I said to him, I'm working on building this business. If there's any sort of avenues or channels that you could see us doing work together, my hand is up. And, he said, sort of leave it with me, I'll come back to you. And I thought, well, that's one of those sort of polite dismissals. And I've come to learn this about Kun. He will, there is an absolute authenticity and a deep trust that is resident in all of my interactions that I've had with him. He calls me 3 months later. He says, I've got some ideas. Let's have another cup of coffee. We meet in Rosebank, and two things pop out from this. The one is I've been working for the last year and a half or so on a series of white papers on the banking industry, digital banking, what the next 10 years looks like. So, that's very much about the structure and changes. I think it's intriguing what's going on in the industry. And the second proposal was, and I want to put out the story of the business. And his one-liner was, we are forgetting the things that need to be remembered. We're starting to forget them. And give this a couple more years, they'll be lost. And we'd like to record this, get this into an artifact. That was his exact word, an artifact. And the suggestion was I can bring the sort of the rigor and the framework, and Bruce is absolutely brilliant in weaving the stories, and that together we might be a useful power unit.
Yes. So I've had some experiences with Bruce. He's got quite a strong personality.
Bruce and I are good friends. We can say that's an understatement.
Yes. So how did you find working with him? Because you guys are very, very different.
Yeah. Kim, I think working with him, absolute pleasure. He didn't miss a deadline. When he said we're going to get X done by date Y in format Z, the Japanese authorities can take lessons from us. We jigsawed perfectly. It just worked fantastically. and everything I've said here, you can put the exact opposite on. It's tough. Anyone who's worked, in a duet or a team, there's differences of opinion, there's differences of work style. One thing that you think is funny, your partner finds offensive. One of you misses deadlines, then it's the other's turn. You've got material that you put down that you don't quite agree on, and you need to find constructive ways. I think it was very helpful that Bruce and I have known each other for a long time. Through my investment firm, I had been on numerous platforms with Bruce, whether it was keynote presentations, company or conference events, in studio with him, on a mic, around a mic. So Bruce and I have gotten to know each other really well, and that allows us to speak to each other clearly, directly, without sort of taking offense and exception. I learned a lot more about him after the fact than before, and he'll tell you the same about me. So we've gotten to know each other well, and we're still on talking terms, which
Yes.
Yeah. Some tough places. It was hard to get the single voice because we think differently, we speak differently, we come from different backgrounds. So we look at the exact same thing and we've got different lenses on it. That's a challenge. My favorite words are not his favorite words. My way of approaching an argument or an idea, different to his. So we had to find ways to get that to sit together really neatly. You've got the book. I'm not sure if you've read it.
I've read it.
But you'll tell me if it works.
Yes, I think it works very well. In fact, what I did is on the way to church, I would actually read segments of the book to my kids. Okay. Because the language is very accessible, so words like globalization and that kind of thing, my son actually got it. As I was reading it, I would say, what does globalization mean in this context? And then he's 11 years old, he could actually give that to me. So obviously I didn't read him certain aspects because it was much too high level, but those general concepts actually made a big difference. Now, I have to share my first experience with TymeBank. It was during COVID, and at that time we were staying in a complex, and there was a young guy that I've known for quite a significant amount of time who didn't have a car at that time because the economy had taken such a knock. They'd had to get rid of the vehicle that he was using. And so my husband and I had to go to Pick n Pay to do some shopping, and he said, can I send you some money and can you buy my groceries for me while you're there? So I said, absolutely. So he says, well, I'll send it to your cell phone. So he sends me the cell phone and he says, it's from TymeBank. And I said, there's a TymeBank? I've never heard of that before. He says, no, don't worry, just go to Pick n Pay. You have this little number and then you withdraw the cash and then you go buy these things for me. So I said, absolutely. And as an author, I love research. So I went onto the internet and I'm like, oh, there really is a TymeBank. And did all my little bits and pieces, and there I had an account number within a few minutes. So off I go to the bank and I say, or to Pick n Pay, which for the international audience, that is a big retail outlet, mainly groceries and a couple of other things. I go there and I say, I'm needing to get this money, and they say, sorry ma'am, you can't get the money because it's already put into your account, you need a card. So a card.
Yeah, off we go now.
Okay, so where the heck do I get a card? So she, well, there's a kiosk over there. So I'm like, there's a kiosk. So I go and I do all the things. There's a person there that helps me, and out pops the card. And I kind of felt that I'd been put into one of my fantasy novels, that there was a fairy godmother with a magic wand. And I'm like, so don't have to hand in a lease, don't have to hand in a phone account, and I don't have to wait 10 days.
Samples.
Don't have to wait 10 days for the courier to come and deliver the card to me. I can use it instantaneously. And it really made me think about the banking world that we've grown accustomed to in this big shift. Now, you mentioned in the book about the drive, that passion to have banking inclusivity. So explain to us how that vision came about, and also what it means from, particularly in the South African context, how many people actually have bank accounts and what having access to a bank account could mean.
There's a lot in that. Let me try and unpack a couple of the aspects. The first is John Kane, who's one of the creators of this kiosk, talks about this as the time machine. And I just love this. He's got a fantastic sense of humor. The fact that you can, with a fingerprint, a photograph, and pinging Home Affairs in the space of 5 minutes, you've got proof of life, proof of residence. You're holding your bank card in your hand. It's remarkable. The way that they have combined that technology with human behavior, I think, is the nuance, and that's what really drives the model. So you suggest that when you went to the kiosk, there was a person there. These people are called ambassadors, and they bring the human dimension to opening your bank account and making it personal, because banking ultimately is an industry built around trust. This is the golden thread that weaves through the industry over centuries and centuries. But the technology itself is impressive. The differentiator is this business model with retail businesses as the distributor in the Philippines. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a moment. They've partnered with one of the largest retailers, which is owned by the Gokongwe family. Robertson's is their best known business, which would be the equivalent of our ShopRite or Pick n Pay. But to go to the other aspect of your question is, what's the story behind the inclusion? One of the founders, Konrad Jonker, was at Gibbs, where he stumbled into the work of Hernando de Soto and C.K. Prahalad. This is a very powerful duo where they evidence the importance of inclusion and how powerful including what is referred to as the base of the pyramid is, and what happens to your society when those people are given dignity, when they are recognized, when they're given capability and capacity, or the alternative is you can keep them locked out. And C.K. Prahalad and De Soto reveal the things that make this possible. Individualization of property rights, giving people access, creating symmetry in information, so on and so forth. This allows people to get onto, amongst other things, the financial pyramid and the economic pyramid. It might be at the base, but that is the essence of inclusion. And why is this so important? Let's play another game. Let me take away your bank account. How's life going? And so the bank account gives a first clue, as to why this is important. Now there's a big however. And don't mistake a bank account for functional financial inclusion, because with a bank account, you can do lots of damaging and irresponsible things. You can get into wasteful consumption as opposed to investment. You could game your spending away, as opposed to allocating it to education. You might have a bank account, but you don't have access to insurance. So the bank account just opens the door. It's what happens next with the bank account.
As I was reading the section where you had statistics on how many people globally do not even have a bank account.
I didn't answer your question about the South Africans. 12 million.
There you go.
12 million Tyme account holders.
Okay.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
So I actually had that kind of flashback where you used to have your ladies who would get onto the taxis and they would put the money in their bra. And that has just changed things. People who work from a shift perspective, you can't go into a bank. They don't have that kind of time, that luxury.
Yeah.
This has actually made a very big difference to those kinds of people because it's so quick and easy.
So, just think of those very practical elements. If you have to go to the bank, not once, a couple of times to, in a traditional incumbent bank, you have to have all of your proof of, pieces of. This is expensive. The transport, the time away from family, perhaps the time away from work, the printing the documents. Just think of the investment that needs to be made. Here's an alternative. And this is not, saying that, well, look at what these traditional banks are doing is wrong. Here is an opportunity for them to transition and transform and to adopt these practices which give people the same type of access and convenience. And then, let's be pointed about this. If you open a bank account and the bank pays you interest on your savings that don't really reward you the same way it rewards more affluent customers, that's going to exclude you in other ways. It's going to aggravate inequality in a society. Or they might pay you the same interest rate, but they then confiscate it back with fees. So there's lots of nuances in the story of how financial inclusion brings dignity, brings access, brings convenience, and then allows people to build belonging.
And I saw that they had a really smart way of doing it. So inside the book, you have the difference between what it costs a traditional bank to service a client and what it costs TymeBank to service a client. Tell us about the difference in the statistics.
So you really have read the book. That's cool. The numbers they're almost hard to believe, certainly when you hear them the first time. A traditional bank to look after a customer on an annual basis, about $170. For Time and other digital banks, in the region of $7. To think of what that means, there's two ways of looking at this. The one is, well, Time could take all of this as profit, or other digital banks look at all of those costs that we've excavated. Let's boast our profit margin, or they could put that back into the pocket of their customers. And the digital banking model does something magical. In strategy, the argument often is you have to choose A or B. Here, the model allows you to do both. So not only does the business model work better with wider margin, higher return on equity, but the customer gets lower cost, higher interest rates. It's a true win-win, the essence of a disruption.
And the other thing I found very fascinating in the book is that you put down, I hope my memory is correct on this, but that the bank grew by 50 times in terms of customer base, but their costs only increased by, what was it, 0.
Exactly. And that's the essence of the model, is you can now, the marginal cost of adding customers is approximately zero. And this business has grown from a few million customers in South Africa to 12 million customers. Any other business that was trying to do that would be talking about 3x, 4x, 5xing the costs and just trying to protect margin. But the cost base is hardly moving. It's moving by a few percentage points. And the customer count is going up by a factor of multiples.
What I also found fascinating, which has got nothing to do with banking, but you've got in the book, you've got the adoption phases, to get the first 50 million customers, what it looked like for radio, television.
It's a cool story.
Yes, absolutely. And then ChatGPT 1 month. So I think what with radio was 38 years.
Yeah. And Thread 1 day.
Wow. So things are really, really evolving very rapidly.
So that's what digital does, is it gives you platform, it allows you to scale, it affords reach, so it closes distance. Think about the Time customer, disproportionately rural. That's where they really built the base of the business initially. Since then, it has iterated, and in the Philippines, overwhelmingly an urban and aspirational client. So the business model itself has learned, whilst the platform is the same. I think they're learning more things and better things about the behavior and aspirations of their customers.
And I like the element of the spaza shops because it was very much community-based and more accessible from that perspective. But they had a couple of challenges. I mean, this to me sounded like the nomad bank. There's NTN and Standard Bank, and it's like they're all over the place. So tell us a little bit about their journey.
When Bruce and I were doing the book initially, first, there's a nice story about me approaching, or us, speaking about doing the book. Couldn't approach Bruce, suggested, here's the idea. And Bruce gave him a very firm no. He's too busy. Couldn't reported this back to me. And I phoned Bruce and I said, what on earth are you thinking? This is the most extraordinary story. And I remember that first conversation well, because I said to Bruce, in part, this is a story of success, but this is also a story of failure. This business has been in near-death experiences, jilted at the altar, had efforts to eject the founder CEO from the plane, maybe with a parachute, but you're out. This is a story that has to be told. And I'm delighted that Bruce changed his mind. The first part of the story is about trying to find partners, and in no particular order. The partners include Standard Bank, or I suppose in particular order. The first part was to build a business called Community Bank inside of Standard Bank, and the short version of the story is they got this business up onto its feet, but the insistence of the established bank was that they had to move onto the existing technology and platforms, which means we then have to put those old historical costs onto. That's not doable. Now, I can't do this new model with old ways. And so there was that made it impossible to do it inside of that structure. And so the group headed off. They were in partnership with Deloitte. Deloitte were helping them build on the back of a license, which was Bank of Athens. At the 11th hour, as the bank is about to be launched, it is suddenly discovered that Deloitte audits the National Bank of Greece. I'm getting that name wrong, but and for that reason, they have to recoil, and all bets. Then there is an effort with MTN.
You have to just say, couldn't you have figured that out beforehand?
Yeah, this would help at the start. Then along comes MTN. MTN, very successful, 5 million wallets are built, but MTN is frustrated that they're not selling time. They're not selling cell time. That's what we need. So that doesn't go the way that they had imagined. Then comes Commonwealth Bank of Australia. Commonwealth Bank of Australia was in some ways a godsend, because although it ended wrong, not in the place that the fairy tale would have it, a Commonwealth Bank of Australia is what afforded the business the ability to get the South African license and to be awarded the first license in 19 years in South Africa. So that was the godsend of Commonwealth Bank of Australia. But ultimately, that CBA relationship also, or shareholding, came to an end because CBA had a change of mind and change of heart, and they recoiled. And ultimately, it's African Rainbow Capital, Patrice Motsep's grouping that it comes to the rescue, the shining knight.
So because the audience is authors, primarily authors for this particular show, I need to ask you a couple of other things that are not specifically related to the story. And that would be, you have already scaled a business. You have already worked on your own business that got sold and JSE listed. What kinds of commonalities would you find with yourself and the founder of TymeBank?
What a great question. So first, an absolute commitment to purpose. That very often when you ask businesses about what's their ambition, why do they exist, they'll tell you, instead of what they believe, they'll tell you what they do. And so in this conversation, what do you do? They say, oh, we'll do digital banking. A purpose-led business says we give people dignity. And from my earliest interactions with Kun, which go back over decades now, that is unshakable, unmistakable, that he is driven by a purpose and an intent. That it happens to manifest in the form of a digital bank, that's the way he's done it. He could be doing it in other ways. And that really resonated with me. That makes a lot of sense to me in terms of the way I have built and run my business. The second is, the idea is neat, but a neat idea with the wrong people is going to land up in a hot mess. And one of the first things that Chart van der Walt, the other founder, Kun's partner, leapt straight at is, you've got to get the right people in the room. Don't worry about what you're going to do. Get the people first. And I mean, that really, really lands with me. The third is, I could share my own near-death experiences, and the people often say, oh, well, you've done so well, congratulations, this must have been easy. There's no part of this that was easy. Yes. The rewards and the outcomes are they're exactly that. They're rewarding, they're fulfilling, even more so that you're trying to achieve a purpose through your business. Not just financial, but the number of times things fall over, whether it's, family, friends, business partners that you thought, were in and they're not, clients that call you and say, I'm sorry, it's over, regulators that change their minds, capital that runs out, COVID that arrives, competitors that, leap at you. So, the fact that they've got all of these stories of, spooking and horror and surprises and the inability to forecast, I think that is really, that was neat. And then just, knowing that the people who are doing this, they soften, they bruise, they bleed, they've got hearts, they cry, they laugh.
I remember I attended one of Alan Ray's talks the one day, and he said it hit me really hard because at that point I was a relatively new entrepreneur, and he said that his child had gone into hospital for some other reason, and he needed to come up with I don't know how much money to get this child out of hospital, and he didn't have it. And you had to take personal loans from people to get this baby out of hospital, and he has this moment where he's sitting on the floor with a child in his arms and he's crying and he's saying, what am I doing to my family? Yeah. I've had that in my business as well, where I'm like, oh, we like this thing is going to tank. Yeah. So I think that's the big thing, is that people assume that when you're an entrepreneur and they see all of that success over there, you've got some kind of magic super quality to you, and that you're not actually feeling the severe pressure that comes with having to make it happen, and all the people who are relying on you in that time period.
The words that belong here, I think are the obvious ones. I'd venture that they're overtraded, but this grit, like a steely grit. Now, if you've got a purpose, a real intent that's driving you, it's going to be that grit is going to be more accessible. The temptation to give up, especially if you are employable in other places. I mean, I would cheekily say, I'm not employable. Trying to herd me is like trying to get a cat into a wheelbarrow with a hose pipe. But you're employable. You could move somewhere else where the stresses would be different. Things would perhaps be out of your control to a greater extent. Other people would be influencing or determining your direction, but the money would arrive.
Yes. Yes.
And you'd be able to afford the baby, the nappies and the formula. And that was another parallel that really struck me with both Chart and Kunrad, but probably Kunrad more specifically, because he happened to be taken into the Commonwealth Bank group and was working out of Southeast Asia with an incredible trajectory, fantastic position, one of the top 10 execs in one of the 10 biggest banks in the world. I mean, this guy is going, he is going places. You just, don't stuff it up and it's going to land up in a fantastic place. And when it came to the curtain call that if this bank isn't bought, Commonwealth Bank of Australia's deems that, if the bank isn't bought, in 3 months, we're shutting it down. That's where Kun says, I'm buying the bank. And, A or B decisions, most people would have taken the A. Yes. I'll take the check, sign-on bonuses, long-term incentives, and life will be good. Kun's wife, Kerry Anderson, she says, there's no time that he thought that this was closable. Quitting isn't an option. That resonates.
And what I also love is the humanity of it, because one of the things that I read in the book is that the ambassadors, they made a decision that those people would never be more than one taxi ride away from their home.
Yeah.
And that just really, really resonated with me, because one of the things that I speak about is postpartum depression and that kind of thing. And so when you have a look at new parents, when they're paying X amount towards food and X amount towards transport, and sometimes having a job means that all of their money is going towards transport. It's a terrible situation. So that really touched my heart, because that is true empowerment, that it's not going to cost you an arm and a leg just to get to work.
I mean, Kim, you and I can quickly find points of agreement. Let's start talking about the taxes that arrive, on what we earn, end of the week, end of the month, end of the year. We're taxed. Oh, it's brutal. But imagine if your paycheck, your salary starts, your wage starts with a tax that's called transport. And it eats a quarter of your, before you've started the month, a quarter has gone to transport. In many instances for lower income earners, that number is even higher. That's just cruel. And that speaks in turn, about the heart of this business, that this business is about building a bank that gives people dignity, that arrives at the place that they are at, not at where this business wants them to be or where it's convenient for this business. That's powerful.
It is very powerful. So a big burning question for the authors out there. How did you pack this on top of what you're already doing? Because when I look at your CV, I'm like, did you actually decide I'm never going to date for the first 40 years of my life in order to make all of these achievements? And then I still want to write a book?
When you look backwards, the sensible decision, absolutely not. Where does it come from? It comes from sleep. It comes from leisure time. It comes from exercise. It requires a very understanding partner. So it's tough. I mean, you've done this. And
15th book now.
Wow. Okay. So you have not learned. something's got to give. It's like saying, well, I'm going to go and do, let me use my business school example. I'm going to go and do an MBA and nothing will be compromised. Something will be compromised. So you've got to figure out what the priorities are. And, fortunately, I've got, a really understanding partner, in business, in life. And I've got a high work ethic. I think that helps. So, that combination gives me the capacity, and then having all of the architecture around you, brilliant publisher, superb editing skills and capability, Bruce is a partner, working on, deadlines, helping solve together. And then in this case, if we could call them inverted commas, a customer, although we were given an unfettered mandate to write what we saw, absolute full editorial discretion. There was not a single influence on what we wrote. But having access to the group of people that make up this business, all of those things, come together to make a cocktail for what I believe is a fantastic book.
So one closing question, because I know that you lecture, and when I looked at the different places that you've lectured in, I thought to myself, well, it'd actually be shorter to read the countries that you've not been in than to read the countries you have been in. But for this particular book, what do you think it gives to people who are studying that they can learn from the book?
For people who are studying, there's a couple of there's a few facets that might resonate. The first is it's a story of entrepreneurial endeavor. That would be one aspect. The second is it's a story of innovation, business model innovation, disrupting a well-entrenched, certainly in South Africa and in many other parts of the world, highly competed through oligopoly, but disrupting through an innovative business model. Perhaps a third, people who are interested in development, inclusion, impact, is what it looks like and why it matters to build businesses that leave places better than they find them. There's arguably another aspect, which is about the context in which you build, and why building in South Africa, Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, these are the places that the group operates, is different. And that the first thing is an intricate, intimate understanding of that context. Context matters.
Adrian, I want to say thank you so much for bringing this book to the world. It's going to be on my kids' reading list as well. We've got this thing going. They get Robux for books. So yeah, that's the kind of vibe. And people are saying like, why would you do that? Just make them read it. I'm like, oh no, it's a new economy for kids. Gaming, Robux is a real economy.
And gamification of reading.
Yes, absolutely.
Thumbs up.
Which reminds me that you actually you studied in terms of gamification and learning.
Yeah.
So that is open for another conversation. But thank you so much for coming through, chatting to us about the book and chatting to us about the process of writing the book.
Thank you.
Guests, stay tuned for the next interview where we're going to learn more about other kinds of books. And remember to subscribe so that you can find out when we release the next interview.